Whoa! This is giga buffed. So for the 1007, February the 23rd, the PTR has a bunch of stuff. In relation to the classes, Frost Decay, Breath of Sindragosa damage has been increased by 25%. The runic power spent per second increased to 18. Ooh, well, the damage I guess is nice, but you get to consume runic power more now per tick. Wasn't that gonna make it harder to keep up the breath? I'm thinking, isn't this just gonna make it more annoying for people that don't like breath? Frost Strike damage increased by 10% and runic power cost increased to 30. Okay, so Frost Death Knights currently have a surplus of runic power income, which is leading to wasted runic power overflow in obliteration builds. Yes, and that's the reasoning for the Breath of Sindragosa change, and no longer than in 10 durations in Breath of Sindragosa builds. Okay, in order to help address this, we are increasing both the cost and the damage of Frost Strike. I do agree, definitely for obliteration builds and Breath of Sindragosa. Maintaining a long breath can feel satisfying for many players, but it can also feel disheartening when you lose it for reasons out of your control, since so much of your damage becomes reliant on a very high uptime on breath. This could also have been reworded to say, because so much of our content is going to force you to stop using breath on a target, right? Wouldn't that's kind of how I feel when I play Breath of Sindragosa. It's like, okay, I know you want me to play breath, but your content does not want me to play breath for a very long time. I do agree with this. I don't know, 25% is probably a good boost. The runic power cost increase is not proportional to the damage increase, because it's an 1/8 of the runic power increase with a 1/4 of the damage increase, so it's overall a buff. Which I guess I mean, breath is just stronger. As far as obliteration is concerned, I don't know if this fixes stuff, because you don't use that much Frost Strike during obliteration. You kind of want to prioritize Rhyme. Although with the increase in damage, the spell that you use to proc Killing Machine is not as obvious anymore. So maybe you do use Frost Strike. I don't think 10% is enough though, considering that Rhyme is also AoE. And then you have, instead of Frost Strike, you have Glacial's Advance. So still, I don't know. Maybe put Glacial Advance there too, right? With Frost Strike? Maybe. This is what I'm thinking as a noob Frost Decay. Balance Druid. Stellar Flare now has an additional effect. If the spell causes Starburst to crash, this is PvP, right? We knew about this, but it has an extra change. Dealing damage and knocking them back. So we knew about this. Feral. Merciless Claws. Now increase the damage of Swipe and Brutal Slash by 15%. So this is buffing the generators. I assume we might see a nerf. Berserk. Frenzy now bleeds targets for 100% of the damage dealt by a combo point generator during Berserk was... Oh, okay. So they take away power from Berserk that Berserk was giving to your generators, then it's putting it back into generators, making you less reliant on Berserk, which is great. They're kind of shifting the damage profile away from the big cooldown to overall having DPS outside of big cooldowns, which I am for. I love not being super reliant on little tiny windows of DPS. Shred, Swipe, Brutal Slash, and Thrive damage increase. Oh, they're also increasing the base damage. Okay. Berserk's Frenzy consolidates a lot of the damage players deal with builders in their Berserk windows. This change is intended to spread more of builders' damage to outside of the Berserk window. Okay. That's fair. That's a good change. I feel like that's a good change. Preservation. Oh, what are you doing to Preservation, man? Ouroboros has been redesigned. Casting Echo increases the healing of your next Emerald Blossom by 30%. It used to be 15%. 30% is big. Stacking up to 5 times. Okay. Actually, it doesn't buff it. It just... Actually, this is a buff. Because you get to cast fewer globals to get an empowered, fully empowered Emerald Blossom. Because you only have to cast 5 to get the full value of it. I did say, when initially we talked about the Preservation Ouroboros change, that this is weird because the buff is pretty big. That's 150% extra healing on Emerald Blossom, which is a pretty good healing ability. That does not work towards tier set. So baseline Preservation with the design and the tuning that we have right now prefers to cast Emerald Blossom in all situations. You never really play a reversion style playstyle. You might take it, but you don't really play it because reversion is very weak. And Echo by extension is also something that you probably don't want to play because Emerald Blossom is so much bigger. So much stronger as an essence consumer. Now, Echo works really well with the tier set because it spreads a lot of reversions, which also function into tier set. Now, increasing the healing that Emerald Blossom doesn't take 100% of the power away from Echo, but it kind of shifts it to where you will weave echoes and emerald blossoms, which is not necessarily bad. That might actually be a good change. Ouroboros went through a couple of changes over the course of Preservation's design, and this might be one of the more interesting one. This was also applying to Dream Breath, so now it's Emerald Blossom. Okay. And it shifted away. Wait, Emerald Blossom and Dream Breath, you see, increase the healing of Echo, which was poop, because Echo does almost no healing. All right. This is interesting. I kind of am excited to see how this affects the playstyle, because I feel like this will change the playstyle slightly of Preservation, which is my main, which is pretty cool. Mistweaver, Enveloping Breath now is visible on raid frames. Okay, Lesson of Fear now increases haste by 20%, 25, so this was nerfed. We are decreasing the high roll of potential of Lesson of Fear to disincentivize aggressive fishing for a favored buff. Okay, moving forward, we plan to monitor the gameplay and community feedback around this silent change closely to ensure the outcome of adding a tracking buff is in line with our goals. All right, well, I guess this is something that you kind of have to really play with a lot to get a sense of the change. Shalan's Gift healing increased by 20%, so a bunch of buffs. Enveloping Mist healing increased. Enveloping Mist applied by Misty Peaks may now be extended by Rising Mist up to 2 additional seconds, was 6. Empower Celestial has been renamed Celestial Harmony. Okay, we knew that. Shalan's Gift clouds now reset upon raid boss encounters, and okay, that's fair. We should probably have more of this, by the way. All of it should reset, because not all of it resets, by the way. I know my stasis doesn't reset on my Evoker. Paladin. Okay, we're gonna be here until tomorrow. Look at all these changes. Blessing of Dawn maximum stacks are now 2 or 4, so a nerf. Eye of Tear moved. A bunch of stuff moved. Switch positions. Amok Freedom is now located. Okay, so there's a bunch of talent readjustments, which is good because the class tree for Paladin needed some looking into. Zealot's Paragon has been removed for red spec only. Okay, but now we have a new talent, Vengeful Wrath. Hammer of Wrath always critical strikes. This talent is located on the class tree for retribution specialization only. So I'm assuming that Vengeful Wrath will replace Zealot's Paragon, and now it always crits. Well, okay. I mean, I guess this is something that we need to see in practice, because I think Red's kind of only really mainly wants haste mastery, so you don't really spec super heavily into crits as a Red Paladin. So maybe this isn't bad. But Zealot's Paragon, wasn't that Mad Paragon? Renamed it to Zealot's Paragon, where Hammer of Wrath extended the duration of wings. So now you don't have the extension of wings anymore, which I guess that's fine, because Reds get a 1-minute wing. Added Hammer of the Righteous, a Blessed Hammer to Crusader's Reprieve. A Blessed Hammer only heals, now have increased range. Okay. Added support for Shield of the Righteous in Lightforge Blessing. Okay. This is a lot of stuff that we kind of need to see in practice. Fading Light now has a healing cap of 30% maximum health. Fading Light should now correctly trigger off of Hammer of Wrath and Blessed Hammer. Okay. Fixed an issue. Bunch of issues fixed. Good. We're kind of skimming really quickly through the red changes, because we've been on red for a bunch of times. And red is probably going to see a lot more work over the course of the next few weeks. Or at least a decent amount of work to kind of like solidify into a proper spec. Fix an issue with Dusk and Dawn, causing it to fail to trigger Dawn for Holy Specialization. I mean, this is this something that happens now, or was this just on the PTR? I guess if it's a bug fix, it's a bug fix. Seal of Charity can no longer critical strike and should not double dip on versatility. Okay. Fix an issue causing Uther's Council to increase incorrect cooldown reduction at rank 2. Okay, so a bunch of stuff. Red, new talent Vanguard of Justice. Your single target holy power abilities cost 1 additional holy power and deal 30% increased damage to rank. So we're seeing a lot of new talents. Divine Wrath, Avenging Wrath, Crusader duration increased by 3 seconds. Adjudication has been redesigned. Now increases the critical strike by 2%, and Hammer of Wrath critical strike causes a Blessed Hammer to spiral. Okay, there you go. Some interaction actually. Causes Blessed Hammer to spiral outward, you dealing holy strike damage to enemies. This is very interesting. This obviously would mean that you would definitely want it with the Vengeful Wrath thing, right? Just the card's Vengeance now has a default range of 8 yards. Okay, Jesus, range red. Crusader's Reprieve now also affects the range of Rebuke. Okay, more range. Final Reckoning now lasts 10 seconds, was 9. And you deal 40% increased damage, was 50. So it's 1 extra second of 40% extra damage instead of 9 seconds of... I think this is overall a nerf, right? Mathematically. Empyrean Legacy lockout period now 20 seconds, was 30. Inquisitor's Ire now gains a stack every 2 seconds. It was buffed. Art of War now only triggers once per Crusader Strike cast, whether triggered from manual casting or auto attacks. Okay. Art of War's chance to trigger increase to 20%. Interesting. Penitence is now 1 rank. I'm loving whenever they're reducing the amount of points necessary to get stuff. Divine Hammer periodic damage now occurs every 2 seconds. Was 1.5 seconds, so a little bit of a nerf. And duration increased to 12 seconds. Okay, so maybe not as much of a nerf. Divine Hammer spins around you, damaging enemies within 8 yards, for damage over 12 seconds. So they've increased the duration, so you damage them for a lot longer. This is not a nerf, right? Overall, is it the same damage? It just lasts longer? It does its damage slower, but lasts longer. So basically the same change. This is just up for a longer period of time. Maybe to match with damage windows. Wings lasts for 20 seconds. This lasts for 12. Final Reckoning lasts for 10. So maybe to adjust DPS windows, I would imagine. Vanguard's momentum is now 1 rank. Hammer of Wrath damage increased by 16%. Execution sentence now causes 25% of damage you deal to be added to sentence was set. Whoa! This is giga buffed. Well, I don't know how it is now on live, but 25% from 10% was pretty big. Blessed Champion now correctly states that additional Crusader Strike targets are okay. Crusader Strike hits an additional 2 targets, but deals 50% reduced damage to secondary targets. It didn't say the 50% reduced damage, did it, before? Now correctly states that the additional Crusader Strikes are hit for... But it did in practice. Okay, so they're just adjusting tooltip. Commanding Judgment now causes Judgment to deal 50% reduced damage to extra targets. So it's the same thing. So the thing that lets you hit extra targets, but it deals less damage to the extra targets. Okay. So they're soft capping AoE damage again. Fine. High Lord's Judgment now additionally increases the duration of Judgment by 2 seconds per rank. Okay. Tempest of the Lightbringer no longer consumes a stack of Judgment. So Judgment debuffs targets to take extra holy damage from your next finishers, right? And Tempest of the Lightbringer is the proc where you press the Divine Storm and then you launch a Divine Storm out, right? So the Divine Storm that you launch out does not consume Judgment anymore. Does it benefit from the extra damage though? That's the interesting question. Crusader Strike now generates 1 holy power every 2 attacks. Was every attack. Okay, this is where your Crusader Strike is replaced by auto attacks and your auto attacks hit harder. Alright, okay, this is probably just going to see a bunch of balance. Righteous Cause, chance to trigger reduced to 20%. What was Righteous Cause before? There's a lot of new stuff. Righteous Cause, Templar's Verdict, Final Verdict, and Justicar Vengeance have a 20% chance to reset. Okay, so this is basically the Art of War proc. So they've buffed Art of War proc chance, but they've lowered Righteous Cause. Alright. Vanguard's Momentum no longer grants additional damage to Hammer of Wrath, as base damage was significantly increased. Fixed an issue, fixed an issue, fixed an issue, fixed an issue. Okay, just issue fixes. Shaman, this is where everybody's waiting for elemental buffs. No elemental buffs. The following abilities now show on the personal resource display. Echoes of the Great Sun Ring, Primordial Wave, and Ascendance. This is exactly what all of the elemental shamans have been asking for. No, it wasn't. Alright. I'm joking with elemental. Listen, it's not that bad, but it's no secret that its damage was a little bit So it's just elemental shamans just have a bunch of changes to the personal resource display, which I don't know if a lot of people use. Most people use weak auras or every type of add-ons. So they've improved the personal resource display, which I'm actually super down to, because I liked using it, but it didn't always show all the things that I wanted it to show. So I always had to resort to weak auras anyway. For Restoration, though, improved Primordial Wave increased the healing done by Healing Wave by 13 to 25 was 8. Whoa! Okay, this is a big buff. Improved Earth Living Weapon increases the healing of Earth Living Weapon by 20%, 40 to 1530. Okay, nice buffs. Also triggers on targets below 18 to 35 as opposed to 13 to 25. Okay, proper executes. The following abilities now show on the... Okay, Primordial Wave shows, Tidebringer, Spiritwalker, Saddle Totem, and Ascendant. Alright, this is good. This is mostly PvP. So there's a bunch of quality of life changes. I feel like a lot of elemental shamans are still waiting for some numbers to be adjusted, considering all the buffs that everybody else is getting. I'm sure Survival Hunts are still waiting for some addressing to their talents. I know I am. But overall, this is looking pretty good. These are the kind of changes that are very subtle, that is very nice to do, that these will improve your, this type of changes that Frost Decay got, for instance, will improve your gameplay way more than actual buffs, than actual doing big numbers. Cooldown's working a little bit better, not having to worry about encounters as much, stuff like that. And I'm sure like there's so much to go into Paladin, man. But I feel like we probably need like a final version of Paladin. Otherwise, every week we look at like 5 abilities, 2 of which will probably be removed the week after that, which is probably why I didn't feel like I wanted to stay on Paladin a little bit too much. I am super stoked for Paladin though. I cannot wait to see the final iteration of the changes. Okay, this is good. This is good. I like to see a lot of quality of life and mechanical changes every now and again, as opposed to just flat number increases. So hopefully more of this in the future. Yay!
I've been loving it then, I still love it now. Still, I play WoW. Still, I play WoW. Getting better every day, let me show you how. Cause still, I play WoW. Still, I play WoW. It's getting harder to stay, but at the end of the day, it's a guilty pleasure, so just log in and play. Whether it's classic or retail, I'ma do a /bow. Still, I play WoW.